I've put all my focus into getting to the Olympics. It kind of seems like the only goal at this point.
Okay, it's a good hobby, but do something for your life. After a couple of years, she said, this is my life. And she always said, this is your Iranian mind.
When I moved to Canada, I don't think I was proud of my Iranian culture. But, if we hadn't moved here, there's absolutely no way that I would have ever boxed. If I went back home to my country, I couldn't even train.
There were things that girls and women cannot do in Iran, even now.
She's very unconventional, but it works for her. She's ranked #1 in Canada right now.
With a sport like boxing, things can change within seconds.
So what Tyson says is, you have a game plan till you get punched in the face, and this qualifier is a big one for her to win. That's your ticket to the Olympics.
In Farsi, Nyousha means a person who can listen and hear very well from her heart. Nyousha.
My mom went to prison for being an activist.
I was witness to torture with other people. So I'm imagining my kids being in that situation. I can't tolerate it.
Kind of use that emotion to charge myself up for the fight.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, film culture critic and journalist Carolyn Hines, and this is a YouTube channel / podcast where I speak to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by two filmmakers. Yay! Director Mackenzie Stannard and producer Sepideh Yadegar to talk about their new documentary, Constant Battles, which is about the physical and the mental struggles of Iranian Canadian boxer Nyousha Nahkjiri, who is right now an undefeated boxing champion in Canada. And it talks about her mental health struggles as a boxer, but also how boxing helps her process her struggles with mental health and ADHD. And it does touch on her own mother's struggles as an activist in Iran before they immigrated to Canada. But before we get into that, thank you so much, Mack and Sepideh, for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
Thank you. So at the top, I usually like to ask my guests to say a bit about themselves and how they got involved in filmmaking, because no one's journey is ever quite the same. Everyone takes their own little deviated path to becoming a filmmaker. So for both of you, you both, I've looked at both of your websites, and you both have actually very similar, but also kind of very disparate I guess you could say looks at filmmaking. Like for you, Mack, I've actually seen some of your work before. I've seen your film on Indigenous tattoo arts for South by Southwest, and as well as the one on Joe Buffalo.
Okay.
And I saw that. So when I went through it, I was like, wait, that's Kelly still his other films. I was like, hey. And for you, Sepideh, I was looking at your website, and like you do a lot of work, I believe, focus on like women from Indigenous and BIPOC communities, right? Like you have a film about this young Iranian exchange student that living here in Canada who goes through all of these tumultuous events because of what's happening in Iran, but also like being an immigrant in Canada. You also have like short documentaries about Filipino queer Filipino art. What I guess we call her a mixed media artist in BC, right? So you both have very interesting filmography. Again, it touches it. Filmographies, yes. So Matt, tell a little bit about how you got involved in filmmaking. Like, how did you get on this path?
Yeah, sure. It's a long and strange story, just as you said, that everybody's got their own way into it. But the abbreviated version is that I wanted to be a journalist, and I kind of went down that path for a while, and I think that informs a lot of the documentary work that I do. And I didn't actually step foot on a film set until I was 25 and did a bunch of other things that I think I was trying to find a job that felt like an Aaron Sorkin TV show. Like I worked in sports and I worked in politics, and then eventually I was like, none of this is hitting. Maybe I just need to make films or, make TV shows. So yeah, for me, it started just volunteering on sets in the indie community in Vancouver with like Crazy Eights and then making some spec commercials. And yeah, it just was a freelance roller coaster from there. And some of the films that you mentioned, I was a producer on, and I started my career as a producer, and I still produce, and now also try to have one directing project going on at a time as well.
And for you, Sepideh.
Well, I came to Canada to become a doctor. That was the goal. I was studying science, and and after like 2 years, I was like, I don't think this is for me. Am I joking? Um, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just knew that I wanted to do something in the arts. And I was on the East Coast. I was in St. John for 2 years, and then I moved to Vancouver, and I decided to like go to Emily Carr, which is an art school, and took a few courses here and there. And filmmaking was never like the goal. I thought I'm gonna go into graphic design because that's like in the path of artists. It's you can still be an artist and make money. That was my idea. And then I took one film course, and then everything just made sense. It was a hallelujah moment, definitely. And yeah, I finished that, made a bunch of short films, and made my feature that you just talked about, and got to collaborate with Mac as a producer, co-producer. Yeah.
Talk to me about how the both of you joined up on this project in particular, because I'm always kind of fascinated about how because I've spoken to directors and producers and everything and talked about how people find their way to working on projects. And like for a project like this, how do you become involved in a project like this? Like how do you go about finding your interview subjects for these documentaries? Like I'm always curious, especially if it's for like I don't want to say unknown, but for people who are kind of like in a niche industry, for instance, like for like Sepideh, like the short film I mentioned, like the subject is a queer Filipino artist. Like how do you approach someone and say, I want to make a film about your life? And for a film like Constant Battles, how do you approach someone like Nyousha and say, I want to make a film about your life, your struggles, and all these things. Like how do you go about doing that and then deciding this is who I want to collaborate with to do this project?
Do you want to start, Mac?
Max, you
Sure,
can
I
go.
can start. I can speak about Nyousha. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think my experience is honestly just asking people and approaching them, and I think especially Nyousha, and I mean a lot of the people that I've worked with, they are apprehensive at first, but not because they don't want a film made about them, but they're like, why me, and why is my story interesting or like worthy of a whole film about it? But I think that once you've done a couple projects and you're telling somebody like, no, this is a good story. They trust you. And I think too, for both Sepideh and myself, we're currently making films about people who want to have films made about them and kind of telling stories in collaboration with them. Like there's a whole other type of documentary or genre of documentary that you're making films about people who don't necessarily want their story out there. And I think that's fascinating and interesting and maybe something I'll do later in my career. But right now it's more of a collaboration, and I think building trust with people, especially stories like this, like Constant Battles, when it is like internal struggles and people do need to be vulnerable, then you want to bring them onto the team and kind of co-author it with them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about like the conversations. I like to m- from my point of view, it's like I know the people first, and then I hear about their stories, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is such a great story. And as Max said, you like talk to them, and a lot of times they are interested and they want to participate. And the collaboration needs to continue throughout the whole thing, from like prep to like post-production. Like with Nayusha, we had so many meetings with her, and like I had one-on-one like coffee talks with her as well. So to get to know her, to like, yeah, for her to know me too, it's they are being vulnerable, and they need to know that can they trust you? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, because and I think about it because like like for I guess like everyone always has this moment where they're like, what would be the soundtrack of my life? Like where would I start my biography? Like like what would my memoir be, and these films are like that, there are these memoirs, there are these snapshots of people's lives, and they're in a way, like, I always kind of think of these types of documentaries as like visual journals, and you have to, and trying to get people to open up on camera is very hard, especially when you have like a camera crew going around. You're like, oh, and by the way, this film is more than likely going to be shown all around the world, at different film festivals, and like you kind of think about like who could potentially see these documentaries, and like how, when, and in considering all of these aspects of making a film like this, where does the first idea for making a film for like this come from, Mac? Like, when did you first learn of Nyousha, and then you decided, oh, I want to make a documentary and a film about her?
I feel like it's never an instant thing, you know? There's always, I mean, I'm sure you have it as well. You have like a spark of an idea that you see something on Instagram or a news article, or you hear about a story from a friend that you're like, oh, that could be interesting. And then it's a Sepideh of meeting with people and just talking to them further. And it's not really like a checklist that you're looking at and just going down the list, but you have this mental of like, are there stakes in the story? Is it somebody who wants to be on camera and would be good at like explaining their own story? And so yeah, it just takes time to get to know people and to hear more until everything kind of clicks together. We also like live in a world too where it's like, will this story meet up with the funding that's available? Is anybody looking for a story like this right now? So, yeah, there's a lot of the stars need to align perfectly for a film to be made, but it does all just start with a general feeling that you have of like you hear something or you talk to somebody and you're like, that could be a good idea, and you just have an instinct for which ones to put more effort into chasing down.
Hmm. And somebody mentioned that you'd spent a lot of time talking with Nusha, and like a big part of the film is not just about her boxing, but it's about her struggles with ADHD, and like the mental toll that boxing takes on. Because like I'm not into boxing, but like I watch enough like boxing matches and like enough documentaries and films like growing up in the 90s and the 2000s where people would like boxing is a mental sport, it's a head game, and so like the film is very much into that approach, but it's not, but it's not in an over dramatic way, it's not about, like a lot of especially autobiographies,
Yeah.
it's like very, a lot of them are very hyper dramatized, and like it's very much about, because you have like I'm gonna use like the Rocky films, like you have the bass soundtracks and everything to really say like this is about winning and it's about losing and it's all of this angst, but the film is very grounded in the fact that this is about a young woman who has ADHD and she's struggling with um getting out of her own head, like
Yeah.
she is her biggest obstacle, she's fully aware of this, so like in the conversations that you had with her, like what was it like having her explain that and deciding this is kind of where we want this focus to be, because it's not just about her boxing career, it's very much about someone with ADHD, because that is something that has been discussed a lot on social media, and in talking about like cognitive conditions, and like cognitive health and mental health, like making sure like you realize, oh, like she has this condition, and it is very much a part of how she is a boxer, like she can't separate both of them.
Yeah. I mean, the conversations that we had were about the first when we had the chat, it was mostly like about how like she didn't know what she had, right? Like growing up, she just felt like there was something wrong with her, even though she knew that she was like super smart. All the teachers were saying that she is really smart, she just can't focus. She cannot like sit down and do her thing. And she was like, oh, but I could like focus on the things that I was like so passionate about. And for her to like go and try different path and trying to like find what's sticking and for her to get to that point that, oh, when I started boxing, the first thing was like she fell in love with it right away because she can put all of her focus into that. And for boxing to also like it's a double-edged sword for her, because when she's in the ring, she can be 100% with it, but as soon as something doesn't go right, she can get into her head, and that's where the ADHD comes and um like doesn't allow her to perform the way she wants to perform. It is. Yeah, it's like a cure, but also it's like feeds it at the same time. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Mac.
No, I think that was good. I mean, yeah, part of the question maybe there of working with Nyousha on that part of it. And that was actually that was an interesting challenge through the film, not in a bad way or anything, but like of course for Nyousha, her primary goal and her life is boxing. And a lot of the boxing media she consumes is more of what you were talking about. And so I think at times it was finding a balance of, or even, she might be like, let's talk more about boxing or film more boxing versus this other side. Um, and we did a lot of that, but a lot of that is also what ended up on the cutting room floor because it was it wasn't so much about the boxing journey. It was more about
Yeah.
the internal journey.
Yeah, and I feel like Mac, you had a beautiful vision of that exactly because the film it is a sport documentary, but it's also about Nusha's relationship with her friends, her family, about with her mental health, and like you can see the progression throughout the film, and Mac was able to like actually like showcase that. Yes, her ADHD and boxing are like part of her personality, but then she realized that, and she knows this now that the life is more than that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I think to me when it comes to like when you say like a sports documentary, that's what makes a very well-rounded sports documentary in particular because um the way how sports is like for instance the difference between a film about someone who's into sports versus an artist, say for instance, is there's a kinetic energy that is involved in how you have to tell the story and how you have to edit the story and how everything moves around the story, how you structure it, right? And like a film about an artist would take place more perhaps like in like a museum, in their artist studio, a place where they're more in a solitary environment, Whereas like for someone like Nusha, she's like boxing is a physical sport, like you're not static. It's constantly moving. So you have to keep that energy throughout the film, And so I want to ask you a bit about that, just structuring the film to match that kinetic energy. Because you also have to not only match the kinetic energy with the way it's edited and with the sound design, but also you kind of have to give like maybe like interspersed with moments of more like calmness. Like a lot of the scenes where it's more quiet are like the conversations with her mom, her mom Elehah. And so talk about just like that technical aspect of like figuring out, because this is like the first sports film for both of you, like you've done like different types of films, but this is the one where your subject is an athlete. And like talk a bit about the challenges of figuring out like how you have to like in your own mindset figure out like how do I switch my dramatic mindset from artistic to being more like the energy of like a boxer. Mac, stadium.
Sure, yeah, I can go. Um, Yeah, I think I actually have worked on quite a few sports projects, not as a director, but as a producer. So I learned a lot from, seeing how those unfold. And you're right in that usually by the end of it, the story's not about the actual sports. Or even if we think of our favorite sports movies, and I loved sports movies growing up, like I was an athlete. I didn't make it very far, but like through through being a teenager, like sports was my life. Um, but our favorite sports movies, if you count up how much time we're actually watching them play a game or practice, it's not very much. It's about the relationships off the court and like the personal struggles people go for just to or go through just to show up. And so, yeah, I think we had to keep that in mind, and sometimes we had to keep reminding ourselves that too, because it was especially with the subject who is with Nusha being like, my life is about boxing. I'm always at the gym of like trying to find ways to get her out of the gym or thinking about things that are not so much about the gym. And then yeah, the kinetic energy of the project. I mean, that really our editors were a huge help there. And yeah, a lot of it was actually quite complicated because I think the meat of the film and the heart of the film is in interviews and quiet moments and conversations, and then to be able to weave through that boxing story, it took a long time. Like we didn't get it right at first, and we kind of had to look at it and be like, this isn't working. What's not working? And we brought in a lot of mentors and people with just a different eye to be able to give us some advice on how to make that happen. So I'm incredibly thankful to all of them.
And for you, Sepideh, like what was that like, like being involved with a project like this that has a completely different tone to what you've done before?
It was lovely. I learned so much about, first of all, boxing and how difficult it is to plan around an athlete's schedule because you never know when you have to go grab the camera and go and film them. And Mac has told me that if you think this is hard, go try to make a documentary about snowboarders. That's even
Oh,
harder. So, yeah, I learned a lot about that. And it is, even though it's a documentary about an athlete, it is still like the bones of it is very similar to what I do, which is stories about women and BIPOC community and Iranian women who have suffered the Islamic Republic's oppression, So it is still very similar. So I was so grateful that I was invited to be part of the project through Mac and bring that knowledge to the table.
Mm. And in talking about that, that's what I want to talk a bit about that because the thing is, the other really I think main aspect of this film, like I mentioned, a lot of this calmer scenes take place between Nyousha and her mother, and they're talking, and a lot of their discussions revolve around them being immigrants. Like her mom making the decision for her family to move from Iran to Canada to protect Nyousha and her brother. To say, I want you to be able to have the life that you want, but and one of the aspects of that, which I was when she mentioned it, I wasn't even expecting. She says they want her to be able to protest if she wants to protest, because her mom was an activist in Iran, after the government was overthrown and the Shah came in and it became a theocracy. Her mom was an activist who was in prison for 4.5 years, so she has a very intimate knowledge of having your rights to protest as a woman stripped away, of going from being free to being oppressed by a dictatorship, and that aspect of the film, I think, really plays a very interesting aspect to who Nyousha is as an athlete, because her mom makes the connection between fighting as an activist and fighting as a boxer. And I love that it's her mom that made that connection for her, that her mom is like, I want her to fight in whatever way that she sees fit, and she's like, boxing is the way she does it, and I want you both to talk about just like getting those kind of moments from her mom in the film, and the film is ultimately about women, but women fighting and women having these internal struggles and their own mental struggles, and her mom having her own forms of depression because of what happened to her, and like talk about that, because I love those scenes with her mom, and like her mom is just so like not only supportive, but her mom was kind of like, you can do it. She's like, I made this choice for you and you didn't even have to. And, like, because a lot of people would have the assumption that maybe it was the dad that would say, to move. And the mom was like, no, I think we should move. And the dad was like, okay. After a while, of course, it took him a while, but he was like, okay, we'll do it. So talk a bit about that and like how that actually plays into the constant battles in the title of the film, like it's like these are constant battles that women have to struggle with, whether in whatever career they are, but because women in society, patriarchal society, these are the struggles we fight with.
Well, you
Yeah.
there, start us off.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it's like kudos to Mac also to seeing Elehah's story, Naisha's mom, because like based on like other documentaries, it was gonna be just like a very simple conversation and an interview with Elehah and Naisha's dad, but like for him to see that, oh, there is way more here and there's way more like connection between Nyousha and Elehah, and trying to like bring that to the surface and showcasing this resilience and the fight in the ring or fight in the street for freedom. It's like it gets passed down from generation to generation, and just like so kudos to Mac for like seeing that and actually like making a film about that. I forgot about your question.
No, like I'm just like talk to me, because no, just talk to me about just how that becomes an aspect of the film that perhaps you weren't expecting about. Because again, like we at the start of the film, I had no idea where this was gonna go. Like
Yeah,
constant battles, the theme on the title of
yeah,
Battles is gonna be watching the film and reading the synopsis, you're gonna think it's about her, but
Yeah.
Nyousha struggles as a boxer, you know, being a female boxer, being an Iranian Canadian female boxer and stuff. But then you bring in the mom, and it's like the concept, the idea of constant battles opens up like almost exponentially, because you take it into basically a global perspective, you know, especially considering what is happening now in Iran and in Lebanon and in Gaza and Palestine. Canada's involvement is that as an imperial as an
Mm.
imperial entity, you know, and like so like watching the film, it just makes me think about how we as human beings, our lives have so many different paths that it can take, and so many different things. Someone can look at one aspect, but then you're able to make a connection somewhere else. And I see this film as that, you know, like
Yeah.
you're making connections between Nyousha's career as a boxer and you're connecting it to her mom's experiences in Iran, you know, and like
Yeah.
and I love that about the film. Again, I love when I watch a film and I
Mm.
get completely surprised by where it's going. Like I would have
Yeah.
never imagined that that's where her mom's gonna say, "Oh, by the way, I was an activist and I was in prison for 4.5 years." Couldn't I
As a 16-year-old
as a
also, just
16
like
year old, right? So
it's
talk
so
about that because
crazy. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
talk about like having her have that moment on camera, and
Yeah.
it's a very emotional moment. You know, she has to get up and she has to excuse herself, but
Yeah.
like talk about just like being the director and producer and watching that happen. You realize this film actually became more than we possibly anticipated. You know, and
Yeah.
like having her mom like reveal that, and then you as filmmakers have to then go and do the archival footage to connect. Like, you know, like you were thinking, oh wait,
Yeah.
we weren't necessarily thinking about this. Now we have to go and do additional research to connect all of these dots with archival footage and like with news footage and everything happening.
Yeah. Well, when Mac and I had one of the first like sit downs with Nyousha and Elehah, that was when we found out about Elehah's story, and we were like, "What? We didn't know that. This is crazy." And we asked if she would be open to like talk about it in front of the camera because, as you said, it's such a heavy subject, and it's her first time like. I don't think she's ever talked about it in front of the camera, and she hasn't like talked about it in a very long time. That's why it was so emotional for her and for all of us because it's unfortunately not a very unfamiliar story in like the Iranian diaspora community, but a very touching and it's always like it's so sad as a 16-year-old. Imagine going to prison for 4 years and it still hurts her to even like think about it. She was like sharing some of the stories and we couldn't like it was a lot. Even for Nayusha, I don't think she has ever heard her mom talk about it. So that was like another thing that the film did for their relationships. They were able to like talk about Eloh's past and for Naisha to sit there and be like, oh my God, you have sacrificed so much for me to be here and do this. So it just like took the film to a next level, which we did not expect. Like I don't think any of us knew that the film is gonna act this way for them. Yeah, it's a lot of filmmaking is about you have a plan, you go with it, and then it's good that you have a plan because when other things happen, you're like, oh, we should follow that. And I feel like it was a lot of that, right, Mac? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We started with a script, which I feel like next time I make a documentary, I'm not even going to have a script to start. It just, yeah, it ends up all getting thrown out pretty quickly. Maybe we tried to stick to it a little bit too much at the beginning, but yeah. And also, like Elehah was so open and wonderful with us of well letting us into her house and her life and she had a lot more to risk as well because she still travels back to Iran and has family there and so yeah sharing her story was brave and yeah, and she's just a lovable human. Like you see that on screen, and loves her daughter so much, and cares so passionately for the people of Iran, and wants to see them have freedom. And yeah, so I think just when you're we knew, as Sepideh said, we met early with her and had some of these conversations, but you never know how somebody's gonna present once there's cameras and lights, and
Yeah.
she was great at sharing her story on camera. And as that was happening, I think we knew that um, it almost became a head scratching moment of like, oh, we could make a whole film just about this, but we don't really have any footage to like back it up. So it can't just be a film of a whole interview. Um, and yeah, and kind of an interesting like behind the scenes thing, but during that kitchen conversation that Nyousha and Elehah were having, that most of it, well, like 90% of it was in Farsi, and I don't speak Farsi. And I was kind of trying to like guide the conversation in certain directions. And so yeah, Sepideh and I were like sitting next to each other, and she was almost kind of like live translating, and I would like, give things back. She'd be like, "This is really good," and so it was a really interesting way of working together of that I had never done before, and I don't know how many people have. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I love those conversations because I've done a few interviews with some Iranian female Iranian filmmakers, and the films are about the struggles that Iranian women have in Iran, and the culture and everything, but also about how resilient of many of them are, but then how they're also not afraid to pursue like different avenues of life, and like they're like, I'm an artist. I'm gonna make a film about singing, I'm gonna make a film about art, I'm gonna make a film about Iranian women succeeding and pushing forward despite or in spite of the oppression, and that we're gonna make it through. And the film, I see like Nyousha like as part of that, like her her mom and her dad and she and her brother immigrated, and her mom immigrated knowing that her daughters are gonna understand why we're immigrating, and like it's only actually in the course of making the film that Nyousha herself has that revelation and realize, oh, I understand fully why because she's like, I don't have the resentment anymore. And there's a shot with like where she's getting ready to go in the ring, and her pants, her Boston shorts has the slogan that has been a part of the protest in Iran, like women, life, freedom. And I want and in making sure that you're making a film that is about especially a young woman that is still like facing so many uphill battles. Like she's a fighter, like she's a professional, she's gone pro now. And I want to ask you both about making sure, and this is something that I always ask like documentary filmmakers, and making sure like you have a subject and you have your film, you have an objective to make a film, like if like you, but you still have to make sure that you are respectful of the story being told, that you're respectful of your film subject, and like you have to make that you keep staying in contact with them with regards to what happens before, during, and after filming, because there are these updates. I want to ask you if like what is your process for that, like throughout the filming process, like just like what do you do personally to make sure that your film subjects, that your sometimes I don't even like calling them film subjects, but I know that's the way to explain it. But like, like they make sure that they're seen and heard, and that they aren't just a character in a film, that their humanity is being acknowledged throughout the whole process.
I mean, I can't say for me, like Nyousha and are still very close. Like we still like get coffee whenever she has time because she's really busy. And yeah, we like constantly like messaging on Instagram. So we have like kept the connection. And yeah, because she is more than that, right? Like you spend so much time with people you're making films about that you most of the times you just like build a very strong connection, and that was the same for us. We wanted to also like make sure that she felt safe throughout the film, so we offered like any like help that we could like bring on set because the subject matters that we were talking about were very heavy. They're heavy, like so we offered that. And yeah, and before starting, just like keeping the conversation going. And like when we were on set, we would also always told her that whenever you want to stop, just tell us. We don't have to like talk about anything that you don't want to talk about. Like she had all the agency that she needed and wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you covered it, and like what like I'm texting with Nyousha right now because she was fighting yesterday and was just kind of giving her an update on things. And um yeah, I don't know. I think for a story like this, it's needed, and Nyousha did have say in the edit too. It's a bit of a delicate dance of how early you want to bring someone in, because also if they're not used to making a film, they can watch something and be like, this is bad. And we're like, well, we know it's bad, but it's gonna get better. Like, but but
Yeah.
yeah, Nyousha came on board pretty early to like watch cuts and make sure that, she was being represented in a way that she was comfortable with. And there was, Nyousha was really great about, yeah, being open to even certain things that maybe she was a little uncomfortable with, and we would have conversations about them of like why we thought it was a good idea in the film. And um, I think in time too, like we were a little bit fortunate to have some time between finishing filming and when in the documentary's coming out, that she's grown so much as a person that even maybe some of the things that in the film that she was apprehensive of showing, she's not apprehensive about that anymore, because she's, you know, had steps in her life and has grown, and she sees the value now of showing people that chapter of her life. Which I think is the same for all of us, right? Like when you're in something, it feels
Yeah.
so like emotional, and you're kind of judging yourself, but with some time, you're able to say like, um, tell your story as a story of this is who I was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a privilege to come to witness somebody's journey, but just parts of it, and be like, hey, everybody else, go watch where they go. And that was Mac's like goal, for people to go and like see where Nusha is right now, what is she up to? So yeah, it's such a privilege to get to make documentaries about cool people who do cool things.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's what I love about documentaries like this. Like the thing is like before we were talking about, like boxing being a mental game, and this film is all about, like her like working her way through ADHD, and getting that diagnosis and what that meant for her, and like boxing unlocking it, like giving her a key to manage that and to work her way through that. But something I want to ask you with regards to, because it's a sport, the possibility of losing is always there. There's literally a 50-50 chance of losing, and I want to ask you about that, about filming those kind of moments, like those kind of moments is like, that's another aspect of the human experience and emotions that this film covers. Like we see like her mom like going through that trauma, talking about what happened in Iran, and in the film we see like Nyousha like having this she's like working her way through like her own self-doubt, but then watching her lose a fight, especially was a fight that would have been a qualifier for the Olympics, which was a goal that she had always set from herself for the very beginning. Like, what was it like filming that, and like, like being a witness to that? Because I think seeing it as a filmmaker and watching it in a film is different than it. You're paying to go to a game as a spectator. Like you're there as a filmmaker, not as a spectator. What was it like, like having that experience and watching this athlete who is trained, that you watch train for so long, she won a match and then she came back and she's like, I'm gonna like win this, and then she doesn't. Like, what's that like for you guys observing that?
I think we were kind of devastated alongside her because, as Sepideh said, you become friends, and you just, it's a weird place you live in as a documentary filmmaker, of being like, I just want the best for this person, and I want like them to succeed, and that then also needing to have a plan if they don't, and like focusing, okay, like in the moments that she lost, like it was me there filming with the camera, and I'm like, okay, I just need to kind of not be a friend right now and not go up and like support her, but just stay here and film this and film her being emotional about it. And yeah, it's a weird place to be in, but I think that's like where the documentary side comes in. If we just, tried to keep rolling, and I would have liked to have keep rolling more. Like there's a moment in the film where she asked me to put the camera down, and in that moment I'm like, okay, yes, you've asked me to not film, but I would like to just keep filming. So yeah, it's a weird spot to be in, and I think it was a learning experience for us as well. This is my first time making a film as the events were unfolding. Usually it's like, hey, there's this great story that's already happened, let's tell it. So we had to pivot on the fly as well, just as Nyousha did, of where does this story go now that it isn't your typical Rocky story with a
Mhm.
loss, but it's finished with a win, right? And yeah.
And for you as Sepideh, like what's it like you're a writer, you're the writer for the documentary. How do you write a documentary with with a storyline like this? You're like, you may have had a script at the beginning or this idea and outline, and then these events happen and you're like, like how do I pivot in the writing aspect of this? Like what is that like?
Yeah. Yeah, well, as Max said at the beginning, it's like you write a storyboard or like the script, and then you're like, okay, this is not this is none of this is gonna work anymore. You hope that you get most of it, and then when the interviews happen, you're like you just go to and like story edit based on the interviews. So we did a lot of that, and we pivot as the story was unfolding in front of us. And like we had everything, it's just like it's like carving a statue out of a rock, I would say. So we're doing a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I always wonder about that with documentaries because there's so many different ways to write a documentary, right? Like Mac, as you're saying, like there's a story that already happened, you can structure it that way. But if you're writing a script, like when I was young, before I started doing this, I always imagined like I never really thought of like writing a script for a documentary. I always thought that you just record, watch things happen, and and that's how it goes. But like you still need a structure, you still need to structure the story to make it all flow, to like figure out where you want the scenes with her mom to come in and where you want to tie these things in. And so like for you, that's gonna be my last question because I know you guys don't have to go. So my last question is for you is like, what was the I'm not even gonna ask what the biggest challenge is, but what was like the greatest like gift for you both for making a film like this, for having the opportunity to do this, especially at the time, as again, this film was filmed around 2023, right? And it took a while, and we're in like 3 years later, 2026, and so much has happened since then. Like, like everything in Canada has changed, like for instance, Nyousha, one of her things was like being the first Iranian female boxer at the Olympics. But in 2020, I believe it was last year, the first female Iranian boxer won an international competition. Like there's like this aspect of like just that part of history having like a small tie into the film. Like you were covering an Iranian female boxer's journey towards this goal, and in this moment, you're seeing other Iranian women making history along with her. So like,
Yeah.
what's it like for you, like having that a connection to a film like this and saying, what I do?
Yeah, I wish the the um, the stories about Iranian women would be something of the past, but it's still unfortunately so relevant with everything that's going on. So being able to make a story that makes it into one of the biggest film festivals in North America and have people go watch it and then start conversations about the things that are happening, it's it's wonderful. It's so wonderful to be part of it and help to like shed some light in what Iranian people have been going through in the past 47 years and how it's affecting them still today, even if they don't live inside the country, how it's affecting the next generation, the second generations who sometimes don't get to go back to their home country. They would never be able to walk in the streets that their parents grew up. So it's a conversation starter, and I'm so happy that we were able to like bring such an important story to life. Again, thanks to Mac and his vision and his like artistry to actually see it and carve this beautiful statue of a film.
Well, thanks, Becky.
And for
I
you,
think
Matt.
that's a good place to leave it. Like, I don't have anything to add that's more important than that. So I just echo what Sepideh said.
All right,
Besides
great.
the back patting of myself, I back the rest
You're
of
like,
the
you're like, I did that. I did that.
yeah.
No, no, thank you so much, both for making this film, and I'm glad that I watched
Hey,
it, and
thanks for like really watching it and understanding.
Yeah.
Like you summarized the whole film through the interview, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you actually paid attention. Thank
no,
you.
thank you. I always tell people I always try to pay as close attention as possible because I so much work goes into filmmaking, and I appreciate every inch of it. And I'm glad that I was able to, like, when I got the email from Nicole at Pandora, she's like, are you interested in this film? And I read the synopsis. I'm like, yes. Because I had gotten the email from her the week before, but I didn't see it because my inbox is a mess with all the festival press releases. And it was like, what if Nicole sent me anything? And I went searching and I saw it. I was like, oh, an Iranian film about her. And like for me, like seeing it, especially because it made me think of like the other boxer. Is she Iranian? No, she's not Iranian. But the one that was at the Olympics, her name is Iman. So I was like, I get to do an interview for a film about a female boxer. Yay. But thank you so much for you both for making this film and talk with me. And congratulations to Nyousha. I went looking at her website and she has merch. And I'm like, go, girl.
Yeah.
So thank you so much and congratulations on the film and much success at the festival.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Thanks. Bye. Have a
Nice
good
meeting
evening.
you. Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye.